What time is it?
MailleTime. Well, greetings. Welcome to MailleTime. I'll be your host, Andre Myron of West Coast Chainmail, and today we're going to talk about how to weave Half Persian 3-in-1. Half Persian 3-in-1 is a very interesting weave because it can be made in a couple of different variations. One is the left-leaning variation and one is the right-leaning variation. Here you can see I have both kinds here on my table. This one here is the left-leaning variation, and this one here is the right-leaning variation. The easiest way to tell them apart is to look at the eye shapes that are made by the interlocking rings of the two rows. You can see here is one of the eye shapes, and you can see that in this case the eyes lean up and to the left. So this is the left-leaning variation. In this case, the eye shapes lean up and to the right. So this is the right-leaning variation. And we're going to learn how to make both of these today. Before we start, though, I wanted to mention a couple of interesting things about this weave. The first I've already mentioned, which is that it has left and right leaning. The other is that it has a trapezoidal cross-section, which means it's wider on the bottom than it is on the top. This makes it useful for wrapping small objects like coins or cabochons, and you can actually use it to wrap both with the wide side towards your object or with the narrow side towards your object, and both give very interesting and different effects. So the other thing I wanted to mention is that this is a fairly standard chainmail weave, but it can be difficult to start because the first few rings don't hold in their positions as you begin the weaving. The weave is inherently unstable until it reaches a certain length. To combat this, a lot of people use twist ties or modeling clay or a business card with holes punched in it. I wanted to present to you the tool that we use, which is the MailleCard. The MailleCard is a high-strength, flexible nylon card that has a number of slots in it, cut into it around the edges in different shapes and sizes and spacings, and allows you to take a ring and snap it into one of the slots where it'll hold, and then slap it out when you're done. We're going to use this to weave Half Persian 3-in-1 today. So we're going to use this portion of the card right here, and we're going to start by doing the right-leaning variation. Now to make the right-leaning variation, we're going to snap 4 closed rings into the card, just like this. Now you can see that these rings actually are leaning up and to the left, which might seem counterintuitive for making right-leaning. However, this is the bottom row of the rings, so they actually lean the opposite direction of the top row. But in any case, you'll see in a moment. When they're snapped into the MailleCard like this, you can see how they create eyes. And these eyes are going to provide our keys for weaving the Half Persian 3-in-1. The main rule when weaving Half Persian 3-in-1 is that your open ring should go through one eye and then around another. So I'm going to take a ring and I'm going to open it. I'm going to thread it through the eye made by the first and the second rings and around the eye formed by the second and third rings. And then I'm going to close that ring. Now I'm going to take another ring and open it up. You can pre-open your rings if you like. And I'm going to thread it underneath the first one and go through the eye created by the second and third rings, and then around the eye created by the third and fourth rings. So we'll pause for a moment here so you can see very clearly we're going through this eye and around this eye. And then I'll close that ring. At this point, we can do a quick check to see if we're indeed making right-leaning. If I turn it like this, you can see where the eyes are formed by the two rows here, and you can see that they are indeed leaning up and to the right. So I am making right-leaning. At this point, I'm going to add a ring to the very beginning of the chain to stabilize the first few rings. Because I went through this eye already, I'm going to do a ring around that eye. Just like that. And then I'm going to close it. Now returning to the front of the chain, again, I'm going to open up a ring and I'm going to thread it through the eye that I went around with that last ring. This one can be a little bit tricky sometimes to get in. There we go. Now because I don't have an eye to go around, I'm simply going to go around this one ring, like so, and then I'm going to add a closed link to it. This will allow me to create the eye that I'm going around. It also facilitates continuing the chain after I pull this off the card in a moment. Make sure that's nice and closed. Line it up. All right. So now the weave is stable, and I can pull it off the card, just like this. Set the card aside for when we're ready to do left leaning. And you can see that I indeed now do have some right leaning Half Persian 3-in-1. To continue the weave, you just want to make sure that these blue rings, the closed rings, are in step with one another. Here you can see they're out of step, so I'm simply going to move this up and put it in line with the others. Now I can take one of my pink rings, open it up, place it through the eye of those two, add a closed ring, and close. And I can repeat that step as many times as I like to get the length of chain that I desire. Let's say I'm ready to finish it off. Again, I'm going to simply take this ring and make sure it's in step with the others. Take an open ring, thread it through that eye, and then close it without adding a new ring. And there you can see I have right leaning Half Persian 3-in-1. Now let's make the left leaning version. So the left leaning version, I'm going to use the same portion of the MailleCard that I used before. This time, however, I'm going to snap the rings in so that they're leaning up and to the right instead of up and to the left. Again, the opposite of the kind of Half Persian that I want to make. So here's my rings snapped into the card. Again, you can see the eyes very clearly. And now when I begin to add my closed rings, last time I went through the eye and then around the eye. This time I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to go around the first eye and then through the second eye. So around the eye that's formed by the first and second rings, and through the eye that's formed by the second and third rings. And I'm going to close it. There we go. Now again, I'm going to take an open ring, and I'm going to thread it around the eye. This time I'm going above the ring that I just entered, and then through the eye, just like that. So you can see that in this case I'm going around the eye that I just went through and through the eye of the next two rings. And then I'll close it. Now again, I'm going to take a ring, open it up, and I'm going to go around the eye that I just went through. And I don't have an eye to go through. And in fact, I'm not going to add an open ring like I did in the right leaning variation, because I'm going to actually build it from the other side. So I'm simply going to close this to stabilize the beginning of the chain. Now I'm going to take another ring, open it, and just like I did when I was doing the right leaning variation, I'm going to thread this ring through the eye underneath the previous, actually in this case the first ring that I added. There, you can see it's going through that eye. I'm going to add a closed ring and close that ring. Now the weave should be more than stable, so I can again snap it off the card, just like that. And you can see that now I have some left-leaning half Persian 3-in-1. To continue the weave, again, I'm going to take that open ring, that closed ring that I just added, put it so that it's in step with the other rings, open a ring, thread it through the eye of the last two closed rings, the last two blue rings here, and then add a closed ring. Take it and make it so that it's in step with the others. And again, I can repeat that step as many times as I like in order to get whatever length of chain I desire. To finish off the weave, again, I'm simply going to take this, put it through the eye, in step with the others, and close it. And now I have a left-leaning half Persian 3-in-1. There. And I can contrast that with our right-leaning half Persian 3-in-1 here. So again, you can always tell by looking at the eyes that are formed by the intersections. These are leaning up and to the right. These are leaning up and to the left. So here's my right leaning and my left leaning. So I hope that this has been a helpful video for you. I'd ask that you come check out chainmaildude.com, where we do sell the MailleCard and we do ship internationally for a very low cost when you order just the card. We also have all manner of loose links and tools that would be of interest to the chainmail enthusiast. So I hope you come check us out. In the meantime, this has been Mail Time with Andre Myron from West Coast Chainmail, and I wish you happy mailing.